Once the plaintiff has presented all of his witnesses and evidence, and the defendant has presented all of his witnesses and evidence, we have closing arguments, and we start with the plaintiff's lawyer because he has the burden of proof, and now he can argue the meaning of the evidence that has gone in. He can argue his case. Then the defendant gets to make closing argument, and then because the plaintiff has the burden of proof, we allow him the opportunity to speak a second time in closing argument to rebut, do a rebuttal of whatever arguments that the defendant brought up that might disprove the case. And then the judge reads those jury instructions, and he swears in the bailiff, and the bailiff takes the jury out to a deliberation room, and they deliberate on the case, and they come back with a verdict. They decide the case. Judgment in favor of George Smith for $100,000 or $1 million. And so then we have a judgment. What happens next? Well, among the standard things that happen is that the losing side will file a motion JNOV, judgment non obstante verdicto, which is Latin for a judgment notwithstanding the verdict. And what they're saying is, hey judge, you heard all the same evidence and arguments that the jury heard, and you must know that given these facts and the law, they screwed up. They got it wrong. And so we're going to ask you to enter a judgment which overturns the judgment of the jury and gives the award instead to the other guy. Well, judgment JNOV almost never gets granted because, you know, judges, as state court judges, have to get reelected, and they don't favor saying to a jury of citizens, hey, thanks for being here for days on end, listening to all this evidence and struggling to come to a good verdict, but I've decided you're all wrong and you can all go home now, and I'm deciding the case the other way. They don't like to do that. But it's usually not necessary to do that because juries, usually you would be inspired by how hard they try to come to a fair resolution. And I think it was the first 20 years of my practice that I said I was very proud of the fact that I had never seen a jury fooled. I had done well in every jury trial I'd ever seen. I always had seen them do right. And then I had one case that went south on me, and after that, then you worry a lot more. But as a general rule, good American citizens make good jurors, and they work very hard. And there's little reason for a judge to enter a judgment JNOV. Once in a blue moon, however, a judge will have the courage to say, there was a mistake, the jury screwed up, I'm reversing their decision, and I'm making a different judgment. I don't have an example of that to tell you about. It's so rare. But I do have something that would be fascinating for you to see that's very similar. There is a award-winning movie that did not do very well at the box office because it's kind of long, and the early part of the movie is kind of slow. But it is a fabulous movie. It's called Snow Falling on Cedars. And in fact, you can get extra credit in this course if you watch that movie and write up a little paragraph about it for me. But I strongly recommend it if you can get it. It's called Snow Falling on Cedars, and it is an example of what can happen when everybody in the community is crying for blood and one person stands up and says, no, we're going to do the justice thing here, and we're going to discover what the truth is, regardless of what the social pressures are. It's an example of what can happen when one person stands up for truth and justice. Pretty inspiring stuff. Okay, so that's Snow Falling on Cedars. We have the judgment. We had a JNOV. It was denied. The judgment is entered by the court, and you send a letter to the other side. Judgment was entered against you for $500,000. Please pay up in the next 10 days or we'll start judgment collection procedures. If you're lucky, it's a rich guy or there's an insurance company and they just write you a check and you get your money and the case is over. If you're not so lucky, there will be negotiations. They will say, well, we won't give you $500,000, but we'll give you $200,000 and we'll skip our right to appeal. Otherwise, we're going to appeal. and there'll be another year or two of going through appeals court before you get anything, and we think the judge made a serious mistake during the trial, and so we may have the whole case reversed on appeal. And so there may be some negotiations trying to get a settlement in lieu of appeal, or there may be an appeal, and then you go up through the appeals case. But if there's no appeal and there's no payment of the judgment, then you begin what is called judgment collection procedures, and that's what we will talk about next.